spiritual search. By the way, homeless means you don't have to worry about paying mortgage. And unemployed means you don't have to go to your job every morning. We were trying to take as many workshops as possible, and one of the workshops we took was in Virginia. It was about sincerity. And we would always come and we would say, can we help? Can we help you clean, do any work, but we would like to take your workshop. And we never been said no. And that's why I never send anybody away from my workshop. So it was about sincerity. That was a breakthrough and eye-opening. They divided a group of 50 people into groups of 4, and they placed them in small rooms, and they said, you speak sincerely to each other. But they said, don't just describe events. Describe your feelings towards these events. That's a big difference. Don't just say, well, I went there, then I did this, my wife did this. No, that's not sincerity. You describe what you feel, your emotions, how you feel. And I was so shy that I was just silent there most of the time. I was still conditioned that I'm not as good as others. I was just listening. But when the workshop was over, 2.5 days later, I became brave and I told my husband, I said, Igor, can I tell you all sincerely, and you promise that you'll not stop loving me? And he said, haven't you been sincere yet? And I said, that's not what I mean. And he said, okay, whatever you want. And I started to tell him about my feelings. And he started smiling and hugging me, and he said, wow, I feel the same way. Oh, you dare to say that? I never was brave enough to say that. And then he said, I want to try to be sincere too. And I said, I didn't finish. He said, now it's my turn. Okay. And then he started to say, now I was saying, oh, honey, I love that you say that. 7 hours later, our car ran out of gas. We completely were lost. It was middle of night. We were somewhere in the middle of Pennsylvania. Then we were speaking sincerely for another 1,000 hours, and then we stopped calculating. It became our favorite thing to do. Through those conversations, we cleaned lots of the clutter, and I found most of information that I share with people there. I found most of information that I need to know in my life. I found all the truth about myself. I found out who I am. I became connected to it, and I see that that is my solid ground. When I'm sincere, when I can express my feelings to someone and somebody can listen without judging me, I have always solid ground under my feet. And if I don't, I become lost. For years I was thinking I'm somebody Viktoria Boutenko, somebody immigrant from Russia, something else, which is not true. I'm a beautiful human being as everybody else. As soon as I figure out that I have lots of goodness in me, I instantly saw goodness in everybody else. I see that people sometimes don't realize how beautiful they are, and I just would like to do anything possible for people to discover that, to see that. Now, for years I believed that channeling is just somebody's tales. It's not something serious. But I want to explain to you scientifically that whenever you think, you cannot think sincerely. Every thought has been edited instantly with your brain, which is a product of this society where we live. So every thought is already edited. We cannot think sincerely, but we can speak sincerely. That is why we're so afraid to speak. That is why we only learn, we rehearse. We learn to speak several sentences that make good impression about us and others. And then when it's over, when we said everything we rehearsed, there is tension and we don't know what to talk about. We talk about weather, we talk about news, and that's all. However, if you learn how to let it go and learn to be sincere, you can never stop. Have you ever been riding in a bus with somebody for 12 hours? When you don't care what people think, you'll never see them again? Sometimes they actually marry later. Because when you're sincere with something, you say beautiful things. Do you know when you speak sincerely, God speaks through you? That is channeling. When you speak sincerely, without caring what they say, God speaks to you what you need to hear. Those who say that's what they need to hear. Sometimes we were taking notes when the other person is talking and later repeat it. When first Igor was speaking and I was taking notes, and then a week later we were just driving and it was nothing to talk about, and I just said, would you like to listen to that? And I started reading him that. He said, this is genius. Is it Dostoevsky? I said, honey, this is you. He said, me? He said, this is wonderful. This is brilliant. Well, I think that is clarity. I got most of my information that I share in the classes from those sincere talks. And then recently I read in Everett Sjostrom book that if a man doesn't have anybody to talk to sincerely, he cannot be completely sane. Everett Sjostrom, professional, famous psychologist, he stated that in his book. So, how to gain clarity? Decondition your brain. We are so conditioned. Find those things where you used to think something and now you don't believe it anymore. How many of you have used to think that you need to drink milk to get calcium? Okay? What if I'll give this conditioning back to you? Okay, believe it again. I have magic wand and you just have it back. What will be different? What will change? What will be different in you if you begin to believe that yes? Okay, what will happen? You will become less clear. Okay? So when you decondition, finally you will become so clear that you will not rely on authorities anymore in any decision. Do you understand what it means? Then you gain in freedom. You becoming free. You now can make decisions for yourself, for your life. You clearly see that you've been for 2 weeks on raw food, you felt good. And nobody professional could tell you, hey, you cannot possibly feel good. You know clearly, you see. And though you don't need anybody to tell you. What is different about you relying every decision on somebody else? Well, my finger hurts. I need to go see a finger specialist who will tell me what to do with my finger. That's when you rely on somebody else. When your finger hurts, you think, well, who been longest with that finger? Me. So I have to see what I do with this finger. And then you just kind of go inside, go in tune with your body and try to listen. And you kind of talk it through. You go to somebody you love and say, hey, let's talk about my finger. Well, it started to hurt when? It's when I fell off that rock, so maybe I hurt it. So what can I do about this? And just whatever. I'm just giving you a primitive example, but that's clarity. Clarity is much more important. It cannot be substituted with knowledge. Knowledge is addictive. Knowledge is something that keeps you dependent on somebody else's opinion. You know, my dog started to feel sick. Well, she's a very old dog. And I took her to a veterinarian doctor. And the doctor said she has heart murmur. She cannot walk anymore. She should just sleep at home. Well, for some reason, I took her to another doctor. And another doctor said, no, her heart is fine, but she's developing arthritis. So you need to give her, and the first doctor gave her one prescription, this one gave different prescription. Well, two say different thing. I took her to third veterinarian, and he said, she has worms, and she needs to take pills from worms. The third opinion, well, I wonder if in our town we would have 12 veterinarians. What would I have to do? So how do you know your doctor that you go to is the only one that is the best? Do you understand that if you go to 10 doctors, they'll all give you 10 different opinions? And if you go for any advice for 10 different people, they will give you different opinion? And if people would have clarity and they buy brown sugar, then they will be able to read on the label that this is not really brown sugar. This is white sugar colored with caramel number 6 color. And until now, the most health-oriented people, when they go to Starbucks to buy coffee, they pick up with lots of knowledge, not the pink package, not the white package, but the brown package.